Hello everyone, it's Crystal. Today we're going to talk about the terms ago, before, prior to, and earlier. How and when we use these terms and some common mistakes I've heard. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at ago. When something happens some time ago, it means that it was earlier or before the present time. You are counting back from the present. When we use ago, we should use the simple past tense and an expression of time, like years, minutes, etc. The meeting started 10 minutes ago. I'm late. So we are saying that the meeting started 10 minutes before this time in the present. I lived in Japan 8 years ago. He left a while ago. Bob, I heard that you were really good at basketball. Oh, that was a long time ago. There are some points where you should be a little careful when using ago. First, we do not use ago with present perfect sentences. We use the simple past. Present perfect is used to talk about things that are from the past until now, while ago is used for completed things in the past. So we shouldn't say, she has bought a house 2 years ago. Instead, we should say, she bought a house 2 years ago. So instead of saying, he has gone to Korea 5 years ago, we would simply say, he went to Korea 5 years ago. Second, if you use ago and since together, it might sound a little strange. It might not be grammatically incorrect to use these two terms together, but I do not recommend it. So, some grammar books might say that this sentence is correct. I've been here since 8 days ago. But to many native speakers, this sentence sounds awkward or strange. So instead, I would simply say, I've been here for 8 days. So even though I've known him since a year ago may not be grammatically incorrect, I would just say, I've known him for a year. This sentence sounds simple and clear, so you will be easily understood. Now let's take a look at before. Before can have many different meanings, but let's look at before meaning earlier than something. Before is most often used with the past perfect tense to talk about a non-specific point in the past. We can use an expression of time, like minutes or years, but it is not required. I've met her before. I've never been there before. I think he has done this before. We also use before when talking about a period of time that precedes a particular event, date, or time in the past. So we are counting back from that particular moment, not from the present. I did some yoga before breakfast. I met her before I started working here. She had already eaten before we called. The most common mistake I hear is when students use before when they should use ago. Think about this question. When was your birthday? Some students will mistakenly say, It was 3 weeks before, when they should be saying it was 3 weeks ago. We should use ago because we are talking about a completed specific time in the past. We are counting back from the present. So we should use ago, not before in this situation. Let's move on to prior to. Prior to is used in a very similar way to before, but it does sound a little bit more formal. So we often hear this in the workplace or at university. She needed to finish a few things prior to leaving for the day. Prior to getting her MBA, she worked in sales. Prior to that, she was a teacher. In most cases, you can use prior to and before the same way with no change in meaning. So, she needed to finish a few things before leaving for the day. Before getting her MBA, she worked in sales. Before that, she was a teacher. Next is earlier. We use earlier to talk about a time before the present. I saw him earlier today. He arrived earlier this week. We can use earlier in a very similar way to before when we use it as an adverb. As in, as I mentioned before, we will postpone the final exam. Or, as I mentioned earlier, we will postpone the final exam. But before is used to talk about the general past, while earlier is often used with a certain time frame in mind, like a day, a month, or a year, for example. So if you would like to use a certain time frame, then earlier is a good choice. Earlier this year, gas prices were so expensive. I got this done earlier today. Let's take a look at these two sentences. I liked it the way it was before, and I liked it the way it was earlier. Is there any difference? Remember that before is often used to talk about the general past with no specific time frame, sometimes the distant past even. So let's imagine the situation. My boyfriend no longer texts me or spends time with me or talks to me very much like he did in the past. In this situation, we should not say earlier, we should say before, as in, I liked it the way it was before, because we are talking about the distant past. We don't have a certain time frame in mind, so it is more natural to say before, not earlier. Compare this to earlier. Earlier is most often used with a specific time frame, like earlier today or earlier this month. Even if there is no time frame mentioned, it is still usually implied. So, I saw him earlier actually means I saw him earlier today, even if we do not say today. Consider this situation. I am working on a presentation and my coworker changes the picture. If I say, I liked it the way it was before, it means before now. It is very general. If I say, I liked it the way it was earlier, this means earlier that day, or an earlier version of this presentation. It is more specific, but you can use either, depending on what you want to say. I hope you all have a better understanding about how and when to use these terms. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. Like and subscribe for new content, and until next time, bye!